In our politics lead today, President Trump once again massively downplaying the serious threat of the coronavirus. When asked on Fox about his claims earlier this year that the virus would just disappear, the president said this.
I'll be right eventually. I will be right eventually. You know, I said it's going to disappear. I'll say it again.
But
it's going to disappear.
Does that discredit
and I'll be right. I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think so. You know why it doesn't discredit? Because I've been right probably more than anybody else.
The president, who infamously said in March that soon will we be down to 0 cases, claims that he's been right on the coronavirus more than anybody else. He has not, of course, particularly on the subject of inadequate testing and contact tracing. But as CNN's Caitlin Collins reports, a source tells CNN that the White House is actually pushing back against Senate Republican efforts to give states and the CDC more money to expand both of those programs.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
President Trump sat down with the top 2 congressional Republicans today in hopes of getting on the same page when it comes to the next coronavirus relief bill.
We're focused on starting with another $1 trillion. We think that will make a big impact. And the focus is, as I said, is really about kids and jobs and vaccines.
The White House infuriated Senate Republicans this weekend after moving to block billions of dollars that GOP lawmakers wanted in the bill, including $25 billion in grants to states for testing and tracing and another $10 billion for the CDC. One GOP aide called the administration's effort tone deaf as hell. But today they tried to put on a united front when it comes to priorities.
We're going to make sure that we don't pay people more money to stay home than go to work. We want to make sure that frivolous lawsuits don't prevent schools, universities, and businesses from reopening.
It is not effective.
Talks with Democrats are expected to be contentious, given time is running short and the 2 parties are nowhere near an agreement on extending enhanced unemployment benefits or providing liability protections for businesses.
Obviously, you can't pass the bill in the Senate without the Democrats, and we'll begin to talk to them as well.
After a long hiatus, Trump announced he's resuming his daily coronavirus briefings tomorrow.
I'll do it at 5 o'clock like we were doing. We had a good slot. And a lot of people were watching, and that's a good thing. Then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out.
The task force briefings all but came to a halt after the president suggested in April that people could use disinfectants like bleach to treat COVID-19.
Deborah, have you ever heard of that?
Trump didn't say whether the health experts will join him this time. In a confrontational interview with Chris Wallace of Fox News, he criticized Dr. Anthony Fauci.
He's a little bit of an alarmist. That's okay.
Without citing evidence, the president also claimed that wearing a mask can cause problems, a statement that stands in stark contrast to what the Surgeon General said today.
I'm begging you, please understand that we are not trying to take away your freedoms when we say wear a face covering.
Now, Jake, of course, you have seen this tweet from the president by now, sent out just a few moments ago, finally on July 20th, encouraging people to wear masks. Of course, that comes months after the CDC back on April 3rd initially recommended people wearing masks when they were out in public. And so the question is, where did this come from? Why is the president tweeting this now? Because for months, aides have been trying to get the president to wear a mask when he's in public, to send that kind of message saying that it is important to do so. And we are told, my colleague Dana Bash and I, that this is the result of negative poll numbers that the president is looking at. Many public, even some internal polls that say people do not approve of the way he's been responding to coronavirus so far. And now that's what's getting the president to change his activity.
So it's all about his own political standing. Caitlin Collins, thank you so much.
Washington AP, President Donald Trump insisted good things were underway on the next COVID-19 aid package Monday as he met with Republican congressional leaders, but new divisions between the Senate GOP and the White House posed fresh challenges as the crisis worsened and emergency relief was expiring. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has been prepared to roll out the $1 trillion package in a matter of days. But the administration criticized more virus testing money and interjected other priorities that could complicate quick passage. "We've made a lot of progress," Trump said as the meeting got underway. But the president acknowledged the big flare-up of rising caseloads and deaths in the states. "Unfortunately, this is something that's very tough," he said. Lawmakers were returning to a capital still off-limits to tourists, another sign of the nation's difficulty containing the coronavirus. Rather than easing, the pandemic's devastating cycle is rising again, leaving Congress little choice but to engineer another costly rescue. Businesses are shutting down again, many schools will not fully reopen, and jobs are disappearing, all while federal aid expires. Without a successful federal strategy, lawmakers are trying to draft one. Pelosi said any attempt by the White House to block money for testing goes beyond ignorance. The political stakes are high for both parties before the November election, and even more so for the nation, which now has registered more coronavirus infections and a higher death count of 140,500 than any other country. McConnell and House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy huddled with Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and Acting Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Mnuchin vowed passage by month's end as earlier benefits expire and said he expected the fresh $1 trillion jolt of business tax breaks and other aid would have a big impact on the struggling economy. Mnuchin said he's preparing to start talks with Democrats. He and Meadows were headed to the Hill later to brief lawmakers. The package from McConnell had been quietly crafted behind closed doors for weeks and was expected to include $75 billion to help schools reopen, reduced unemployment benefits and a fresh round of direct $1,200 cash payments to Americans, and a sweeping 5-year liability shield against coronavirus lawsuits. But as the administration was panning some $25 billion in proposed new funds for testing and tracing, said one Republican familiar with the discussions. Trump was also reviving his push for a payroll tax break, which was being seriously considered, said another Republican. Both spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the private talks. Trump insisted again Sunday that the virus would disappear, but the president's view did not at all match projections from the leading health professionals straining to halt the alarming U.S. caseload and death toll. McConnell also faces divisions from some in his ranks who oppose more spending, and he is straining to keep the package at $1 trillion. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer warned Monday his side will block any effort from McConnell that falls short. The New York Democrat is reviving his strategy from the last virus aid bill that forced Republicans to the negotiating table after McConnell's original bill was opposed by Democrats. This time, the House has already approved Pelosi's sweeping $3 trillion effort, giving Democrats momentum heading into negotiations. Trump raised alarms on Capitol Hill when he suggested last month at a rally in Oklahoma that he wanted to slow virus testing. Some of Trump's GOP allies wanted new money to help test and track the virus to contain its spread. Senate Democrats were investigating why the Trump administration had not yet spent some of $25 billion previously allocated. The payroll tax break Trump wanted also divided his party because it historically has been used to fund Social Security and Medicare. Cutting it only adds to the nation's rising debt load at a time when conservatives are wary of any new spending. Some Republicans also see it as an insufficient response to millions of out-of-work Americans. This would be the fifth virus aid package after the $2 trillion bill passed in March, the largest U.S. intervention of its kind. While many GOP hoped the virus would ease and economy rebound, it's become clear more aid is needed as the first round of relief is running out. A federal $600 a week boost to regular unemployment benefits would expire at the end of the month. So too would the federal ban on evictions for millions of rental units. With 17 straight weeks of unemployment claims topping 1 million, usually about 200,000, many households are facing a cash crunch and losing employer-backed health insurance. Despite flickers of an economic upswing as states eased stay-at-home orders in May and June, the jobless rate remained at double digits, higher than it ever was in the last decade's Great Recession. Pelosi's bill, approved in May, includes $75 billion for testing and tracing to try to get a handle on the virus spread, funnels $100 billion to schools to safely reopen, and calls for $1 trillion to be sent to cash-strapped states to pay essential workers and prevent layoffs. The measure would give cash stipends to Americans and bolster rental and mortgage and other safety net protections. In the 2 months since Pelosi's bill passed, the U.S. had 50,000 more deaths and 2 million more infections. If we don't invest the money now, it will be much worse, Pelosi said.